So it still wants to go that way. So I got to turn.
Yeah, it's gonna go that way.
Didn't get quite enough.
We need the bumpers on the gut.
Yeah.
There it goes.
They should.
I'm sorry. I just stepped
Definitely faster.
Took it down to 2.
Oh! Had a jump.
Make the jump just to make it off.
We had that last time. Experience here. It's being experience. I know.
That's one of the words you said. Things that you can do beyond just the coding. I shared this with some of you. We've done this with our elementary, and there's some pictures on the resource thing on the website. But we took a kiddie pool, filled it with water, and did a design thinking challenge. How do you get your Sphero from one side of the pool to the other? So now it's not so much about coding, it's about building a device. And so they use all sorts of things, cardboard and tape and saran wrap. There's other things too. So this is one you can actually buy, but it's like a chariot. And you can have kids design their own chariot races, kind of create the lanes and then test that way. You have to have, we put minifigures on ours when we make ours, and the guy can't fall off or he dies. And so you can do that. Other thing I've seen people do is paint with them, cover them in paint, and they have to try to paint their initials. So just there's more than just trying to do codes of line. I guess is my point. There's a lot of power with decoding, but you can use it in a variety of other ways as well. Sphero has a lot of web or different stuff. These ramps all come from their website. You can make a lot of this. So Andrew made the bowling pins out of wood. If you have a 3D printer at your school, have the kids CAD design bowling pins. Have them CAD design a miniature golf course. Have them make this thing. It's just as powerful, I think, as the coding features of the tools. Think of anything else we usually try and think of and share or wrap up here?
No, the big challenge is I think the kids will be more successful with it than what we think. So it takes us a little bit to wrap our heads around it, but they seem to think this way a lot without us needing to explain a whole lot to them. So I told some of you in here that I did a lot of this during my reading groups when I was teaching in the afternoons as well. It was just a station that they got to use. I didn't give them a whole lot of background. I just showed them the macro lab app about the amount that I showed you guys and said, figure it out. And they stayed at it. There were some of them that stayed at the same exact course every single day until they got it figured out. And they just were very persistent. So it's not very often that you give them a task in the classroom that they fail multiple times and stick with it. So it's just that motivation behind that piece and just reinforcing the fact that there's going to be a lot of failure, but you learn from your failures and you improve your next attempt to solve it. So I just think there's a lot of skills that you can build off of these in the classroom.
Are there any final questions or anything before we let you move on to bigger and better?
Are there any programming apps for that aren't Mac-based, that are Android or Windows or
I would
almost all of these are Android-based.
Yeah, I'd say they're all.
Yeah, they work on both platforms.
Question. All right, other than that, thank you so much for coming to start today off with us. Hope you found it helpful. Enjoy the corner, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get going here. We got a lot that we're going to cram in here in 15 minutes, and then make sure you still have time to grab that seat for the keynote. This is Sphero Smackdown. My name is Aaron Maurer. Just a quick bio. I work at Bettendorf Middle School in Bettendorf, Iowa. I'm an instructional coach with the TLC, so basically work with a lot of teachers developing projects, but outside of that, run summer robotics teams, a young engineer program, just kind of a nerd by heart, playing around with a lot of these things, and actually through conferences like this is how I met Andrew. This is about the only time we see each other, about 2 or 3 times a year when we agree to do this session together, so it's kind of nice to touch base here and also get some Spheros in the hands of all of you guys here today.
I'm Andrew, fence maker. I actually teach halftime 5th grade in the morning, then I took a new role as part of the teacher leadership program. I'm actually an innovation PD facilitator, which sounds really fancy, but it's more or less just trying to find innovative practices in the classroom to help student achievement. So I took that on this year, and like Aaron said, last year at this time was when I actually met Aaron and talked with him, and then started to talk a little bit about Spheros and found out we presented at another conference, and so we decided to do this at another conference, which then led to another one and led to this one. So it's been great to talk with him. Actually, we'll be starting a Lego robotics club at the school I'm at, and part of it's because of just him and networking with him and knowing that he'd be a good resource moving forward with that. So just, it's been a good, fun time getting to know him, and we're hoping that through this, you guys will see a little bit about what you can do with the Spheros. A lot of times people think, okay, you got a Sphero, so what's next? So hopefully you can see the relevance with this. I've used it all the way down in 1st grade, all the way up through 5th and 6th grade. So it can be utilized with the younger age students. There's definitely some applications in those grade levels. So don't just think it's junior high and high school. There's definitely some things that you can do with your younger students as well. So we'll eventually move out. We're going to give you guys some background as we go through it, and then we'll actually let you guys go play. We got some courses set up for you. We could probably just jump right into the coding.
All right, so one of the things that we have here with the Sphero when you get into the coding, just so we're not sitting here talking to you forever right away in the morning, is when you go to program, you have to think, when this turns on, there's going to be a tail light, a really bright blue light. That's kind of its back. And so when we think of programming here in a little bit, when we get these iPads to you, it's not just you program right, you program straight, you program left. Everything is in degrees and in a circle, just like the Sphero. So if you kind of look at the screen, I know it's kind of hard to see from the back, but if you want to go forward, that's 0 degrees on your programming. And so if you want to go to the right, just like a circle, you would start the program, 90 degrees would be your right. If you want to go backwards, it would be 180 degrees. To the left, 270. But it's all in position of where the tail is of the Sphero. And so when you get programming, some of you might be like, I have no idea what this guy's talking about. Once you get moving with it a little bit, it'll make some sense. But that's probably one of the most confusing things for kids and people play with the Sphero right away in terms of it's all where you are in the vicinity of your robot. And so that's the usual confusion thing, but once you get the hang of it, it's actually not too bad. Anything else on that? I mean,
I know that the one app we'll have you guys try and stick with is Macro Lab. There are some other apps that use block coding that's similar to like Scratch. One of the problems that we ran into, Macro Lab, if I'm trying to use the taillight and I'm trying to get it to go straight, I'm going to set it at 0 degrees. But what happens a lot of times is if I want it to turn right, so if I was doing a square, what I want it to do is I need it to turn 90 degrees. So I'm going to go this direction, and I need to go this direction to go back, which is technically another 90 degree turn. So a lot of times students will say go right 90 degrees, but it's still going to go this direction. So that's one of the tricky parts with the Macro Lab is that it's going to stay oriented, which wherever you set the taillight up, that doesn't change from that starting point. So if it's going straight ahead, that's 0. To the right, it's always going to be 90. To the back, it's always going to be 180. So some of the other apps, there's one called Tickle. It's different because it does do that. So if they go right, it's 90, and then if I want it to go back here, which technically is 180, it's just a 90 again. So stick with the Macro Lab. Just understand that wherever the taillight starts, those degrees will stay the same no matter where you're moving that Sphero around. The taillight, wherever you start it, that's always going to be the degrees that you're going to use today.
And a lot of these apps that we're talking about on the conference website, we have a link to a resource page. It has all the apps that you can program with listed. So we're not going to spend a lot of time going through each one. We're just going to stick with one so you can actually get building. But if you want to explore those other ones, if you have a Scratch background or your school that uses Scratch, some of those others may be another viable option. And in the end, they all accomplish the same thing. It's just what you're comfortable with. And sometimes it's nice to give kids different options because we all do things differently. So these are some of the other ones that we had talked about, and they're all in the resource guide. All these apps are free, they don't cost anything. Some of the things when we get going today, because really I think the best learning is when you're hands-on here, that we've found, and Andy has a lot more experience in terms of classroom than others, but for this is keeping the speed the same. So you program based on time. So if I'm going to go full throttle for 5 seconds, my distance is going to be different than half speed for 5 seconds because of the speed of the Sphero. So for the sake of programming, and especially with kids, keep that speed the same. And we always err on the side of caution to have them go slow to begin with. Obviously, you get kids that can move and maneuver in different ways. Then you can kind of open up the floodgates. When we start slow. And that's the same thing when we're doing Lego robotics or Vex robotics, like that. We always start slow so you can understand how things work. When you get into the macro lab, we'll give you these iPads here in a minute. You're going to add lines so that everything flows linear. So you get your first block of code, with your next lines, and your next line, and that's how the Sphero operates. So you just kind of test it as you go along. A lot of times kids like to just throw 20 things out and go, it doesn't work. They have no idea then where to fix it. It's too many variables. So pick one line. If you're going to go straight, just try to get straight. And once you have that figured out, okay, what's my next step? Then you add your next line of code. And so just that, and if it doesn't work, you can isolate that variable to that one line. Obviously, like everything you hear time and time again, don't be afraid to fail. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to make some mistakes today. When we go bowling here a little bit, some of you are probably going to throw a couple gutter balls, and it's going to be okay. And then in the end, with everything, is to have fun. And that is a underlying current, not just with tech, but with school and education in the classroom, is you've got to have some fun. And anything that moves and lights up hooks kids' interest right away. And so once you have them hooked, there's so much learning that can then come from that. When you start to hear them ask questions, start to develop, your curriculum and your objectives will all start to actually take place just through the things that they're trying to solve. Anything else you want to add then?
I mean, like Aaron mentioned, just the speed thing, one of the things that we ran into is if they're doing that square, if they're trying to make a square, it's not going to actually stop on a dime if you have it going 100%. So a lot of times, what kids will find is that they'll put a bunch of codes to make it do the square, and it almost ends up being a circle because they haven't given it the time to actually stop the code, stop its momentum of wanting to continue in the same direction, and then letting it come to complete stop and then go on to the next code. And then also, if you're doing that square, you would set up your first line, test it and see if it actually did it successful. Then add your second side, test it, make sure that it does 1 and 2 complete, then add the third, do 1, 2, and 3 together. Whereas a lot of times, like Aaron said, kids will just throw everything on there and then they'll run it and it'll be all over the place. So then they have to go back and figure out where did the error come, which then leads to the frustration. So try to give them an opportunity to succeed initially so they don't get super frustrated and just want to give up on it completely.
So when we get into this program here,
We could, yeah, they could walk through.
we'll just kind of put one at a table. I know it's not 1-to-1, but you can kind of see a little bit of this program, maybe a little bit up close. There should be a macro lab icon.
I'm going to have the app on my iPad. Should I go ahead, or should I just use yours?
If you want to follow along, absolutely. So the iPads that we had set up, I already have them paired with the iPads that I gave you. So they should automatically connect once we get them connected. But if you already have the app, you can definitely follow along. We're just going to kind of walk you through of what you need to do to actually create take code with it. I might have mixed this. That's all right.
So in this macro lab, this is where your coding is going to be to program your Sphero when you get out here to the hallway here in just a little bit. This is what it looks like. And you create a new macro or a new program, there's a little blue circle with a plus sign. That's what you're going to hit to develop that next program for you. And then when you're in there, you can give it a name to create your, whatever you want to call it. At this point, it doesn't matter, but in your class, if there's something specific that you want to name, that's where that would develop. And then once you're in there, you just start adding lines of code. And so once again, it's that plus sign down here. And when you hit that, you're going to get several options that are going to pop up. And so I know you can't read on the screen, but on the iPad you'll be able to see. You can roll, you can pause, you can do color. There's all sorts of things. For today, to get you going, most of what we're going to be doing is just movement. We have some things set up. We'll show you here in just a little bit for you to test. But this is where most of your starting points are going to be, right here in these three. You know, to roll, to pause, and then some kind of color sequence. And this is what we were talking about here. Everything moves. This is that speed option. So when you click roll, you're going to add. You're going to talk about how fast you want it to be. All right. So you can just adjust this. It can slide, or you can touch those on the iPad and just type in a number. Which either way it works. Your delay. This is how long it's going to go, and it's in milliseconds, not seconds. So that throws a lot of kids off too. But they'll figure it out the first time they go, and it either just goes about 2 inches or it goes forever. And you can start to have that conversion of time there. But once they do it a couple times and make those mistakes, they usually they figure it out rather quickly. And then once you're going, you can just keep adding another line of code. So your code will show up right there. This is what it'll tell you it's going to roll for this direction, X amount of time, and then you can just keep adding the next layer. So you can just add another piece of code, and it'll just keep filling in these lines here as you go along. If there's anything I forget, jump in. What's really important are these two options at the bottom. This one here, this play button, will actually then play and do the code for you, whatever you put in. This one here is your calibration. This lines up that tail light. So that's what we talked about earlier. So when you go to hold that button down, you'll see the blue tail light of the Sphero. And you're going to want to get that dialed in whatever direction. So we have a starting point in some of these missions. You want that tail light facing you, so you know this way is going to be 0 degrees. So you need to kind of recalibrate that before you run each time. And you can see once you get going, they've got to kind of turn it around. So you can kind of see that tail light with a little bit shiny blue object. That's kind of like the tail light. And so what we have are some courses. And so as opposed to just talking about it, we want to make sure you got time. Here's what we have. We're down here around the hall. So you can show off to everybody walking by in the vendors here today your expertise skills. We have one that's really simple. You're just going to start, and your job is to keep the Sphero in the taped area and land and stop in that square. Okay, so just real easy. Just worry about going straight, looking at speed, and then that delay option there with the coding. We have one like this, but it's in an L shape. And so we have another one. It goes up, and then it's going to come across, and then you're going to stop here. So now we've just added a turn. We have a triangle that's out there, and so once again turning, but it's much different than turning in a square. And so it doesn't seem like it'd be much, but this definitely throws kids for a complete loop. And we have a complete square to get all the way around. Okay, so you start here in this square, we've got it marked off out there, and your goal is to get all the way around and back. We will have bowling set up, so we've got some bowling pins that Andrew made and painted and decorated and made sure that Sphero was okay so he didn't get sued for copyright. So we'll have a lane to see if anybody can bowl any strikes today. And then we do have some skate park options. So if you want to see if you can get your Sphero to jump and you know, do some ollies and hang tens and all that good stuff, we've got ramps and all this good stuff. So we've got a lot out there for you just to get your hands on and experiment with. So we've got 5. I've got another one here that we can pair up. And so you're going to kind of just work in groups and navigate. And for about the next 25 minutes or so, I'm just going to let you play and learn, ask questions, kind of pass the iPad around. So you kind of form your own little groups here. And we're just going to rock and roll here for a little bit. Then we'll come back, and then any questions, stuff that you have, make sure we give you. Any questions before we rock and roll on this morning?
Could you
Yeah,
demo
this
one
is
little
the same
program
tutorial.
like
We did that already.
speed or how fast, just like you do one straight line, just an example? Or
Yeah, actually, it would be a lot easier if we just go out there, and that way we can,
All right,
we
because
can
I
demo
was
one.
one and I couldn't tell it like how
Yeah.
long or how far to go.
once we get out there, we'll demo it and help. Yep, absolutely. So we're going to be at the end of this hall, and then take a right. You'll see all the taped markers down there.
Okay, so that was
Figure out how long. A lot of
That
times.
is your word for this.
They'll say times. Yeah, so it's got a really process. Maybe the whole.
blue should be back, right? See,
Yeah, it's like the whole.
Good job.